And here we go. This is the EMS Underground. I am Charles McFall, the media specialist here at Georgia Institute of EMS. And of course, this is our weekly discussion about all things that play into the field, from first responders to firefighters, medics. Even we even have some police officers on here sometime discussing some things. And as we do, I gotta tell you, Facebook, like, heart, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And I am getting the actual live video pulled up right now on Facebook so I can see your comments as we go along. And there it is. So let me hit the comment tab, make sure everything's good. And so this is all about your discussion, your questions, and I mean, I bring some topics to the table without a doubt. For sure. Uh, but it is about the discussion. This is the stuff that we miss in sitting around the fire station. We tend to decompress. We tend to do some cool stuff, and I'm sharing this to my page right now so that more people can find out about it. All right. So I know but the one downside to Facebook that I have found, I like what Facebook is doing. I like where it's going and what's going on with it. But the downside that I personally have is all the set. I can't do any setup ahead of time. At least it doesn't feel like I have to wait for it to get going and then do all the sharing and this kind of stuff. So today I'm going to talk about something that we've been asked about multiple times as a school, teaching new students, is worrying about burnout. What's the half life of a paramedic? What's the half life of an EMT? And when you ask me what a half life is, that's a term with nuclear radiation. So if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I looked it up, but that's when uh, radiation will be around for, let's say, 50 years, 100 years after a bomb goes off, right? A nuclear bomb. Well, after 50 years, the levels are no longer deadly. So while it's still around, it still does things, it's not as effective. If that's the summary of it. So a half life of a medic, I found in my own studies roughly. I haven't read anything scientific. This is all off the cuff of what I paid attention to in my career and what I saw happening. Half life for a medic is about 6 to 8 years, and that is solid, good learning. Still loves the business. Still wants to do change, make change. Still likes where they are. After about 8 years or so, either you drop out and you go on to another field, or you start caring less, and that's where burnout starts to really set in. You stop trying to improve what you do. You stop trying to improve your methods. You get fed up quicker and those kind of things. And part of it is the stress of life, right? Part of that is indeed the weight that goes with dealing with the public day in and day out, the weight that goes with child CPR, seeing death constantly, seeing the gruesomeness, the lack of sleep that you get, the bureaucratic stuff that you have to put up with that makes no sense. All that definitely plays in. But students, who wants to get into a career thinking they're going to have 6 to 8 years of doing it? And by all means, there are some great people who've probably put in 20, 30, 40 years and they still have that heart and they still want to change things. But I would say from my experience, overall, you look for a change after about 6 years. Or you start getting to be that senior person, that seasoned veteran that just honestly is grumpy. I definitely got there where that won't work. We can't try anything new because blah, 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 where things tend to irritate you more. And I honestly don't know how to avoid it except to talk about it. And that's why I'd like to bring it to the table to talk with everybody here about their experiences with burnout. What's got them worn out? What is it that you wish you could change for yourself to make your experience better? I know for one, when I worked, I had a I had a very hardcore vision of what EMS should be when I was in it. It was unrealistic. But the idea is 1950s era, right, where police officers are your friend, and they would back you, well, unless you were black, but that's the whole segregation thing. Um, but I'm talking about the idealistic superhero mentality, right? The firefighter came and got your cat down, and here you go, little girl. Thanks for being a part of the community. And the police officers were there. Well, according to TV, I'm going to show you watch stuff like we watch stuff like Leave It to Beaver or Andy Griffith or whatever. They're just to kind of be the daddies of the town. Oh, don't you do that? No, we're going to look out for your own good. In my idealistic world of EMS was I go in and you leave me alone, except if you need my help. Right? Yeah, if I can sleep, I can play my games, I can work on a side job, I can be improving my skills. There's no reason not to expect that for sure. Definitely studying, learning new methods. But for the most part, who gives a crap what I do? Well, that's unrealistic because that's just not how business works. Business always is looking for something. Now, because my path would have taken me down, I don't feel like cleaning today. I'm sure the truck's fine today. Laziness can absolutely spawn out of the vision that I had. And all I can see if you're commenting is to comment on the actual video here and definitely send me your questions and your comments about burnout or about anything else you want to know, about anything else that you want to have go on or discuss. Because this is a discussion. This is something that I hope we spawn more of in your own firehouse, in your own precinct, in your own station, where you sit around and go, hey, what is it what can we do to bring life back into everything to make it a happy working place? One is to get on a equal vision, an equal footing. Communication, open communication is another. I saw a review of a business. It's like this business is a waste of time. That's just my opinion. You see reviews on Amazon all the time. This thing sucks. These are all bad communications. That's what you get when you burn out. Is you get snarky with people. I get snarky with people. Um, I found many times where I had a heart for something. It's like we can change this, and people would just poo poo on it. I would allow them to poo poo me down, to bring me to burn me out, as it were. And good communication is here's a solution for a problem you didn't know you had. There's one I remember. I want to say her name was Heather Carpenter. She was a medic I worked with, and I think she learned of it from another EMS service or another source somewhere. But an idea doesn't have to be original. It doesn't have to be yours alone to work. It can be something for somebody else. So it's basically the idea was to have a blank prescription bottle, right? No prescription label on it. And inside of it, you would keep a list of your meds. And there's a pre-printed card that would roll up and fit into it, but emergency contact, medical history, a list of medications, and it would be distributed through the senior activity center in the county. And our service would pay for all the bottles, and they'd pay for the print up cards. And I remember all of us around her were like, "That's a great idea." And then there'd be a little sticker on the door and another one maybe on the fridge, so you'd know to look in the fridge because the most common place to put it would be in the fridge because a lot of people put medications in there anyway to keep them lasting longer. Some medications need to be refrigerated, but it was just a common place, easy access for us to look, not digging through cabinets, not going into the bathroom. And it's an odd thing, right? It's an odd thing to have it in the fridge too. So it's just a help to jog your memory. So there'd be like a sticker on the door. I forget what the sticker would say. Hello, Ken. Thank you for jumping in again this week. But there'd be a sticker on the door. There'd be a sticker or magnet or something on the fridge that basically says, look for the bottle. And is a beautiful idea. And I remember all of us locally liked the idea. And I remember Huey Atkins, who was our commander, our manager at the time. I was in Morgan County, so he was over all that. He seemed to really like it and like the idea. I don't remember what happened to it. It didn't get implemented. I don't know why. Maybe because the drive got lost. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about burnout is if we miscommunicate, if we don't say yes, we're going to empower you as a company to go forth and find out more about what it's going to cost to do this. If we don't say as employees week after week, hey, I really think this is going to change what we do. let's do this, then nothing changes. Communication, to me, I guess every problem I have comes down to communication or lack thereof. So when I see a review that says, it's just my opinion, this sucks, why? Why is that your opinion? Why are you grumpy? Why, when you're a senior medic and you've been there 10 years or in the field 10, 15 years, do you just hate everybody? And that's not every, okay. So I feel like I'm over generalizing here. But I am thinking of specific medics that had been in the field when I met them 15, 20 years, and they were burnouts. They just didn't give the basic level of human care sometimes. And it all came down to communication. And sometimes it comes down to sucking up your ego or your pride. Because here's the scenario. EMS, we love scenarios. Here's the scenario. You're sitting in a county on a truck where you might run maybe 5 calls a day. Maybe. And yeah, those calls could take you out of the county, so they could last up to 2 hours. That's a grand total maybe of 10 hours. Now, for the most part, you're not going to work that much, but that's a reasonable expectation, is to possibly do that many calls. Most of those during the daytime. And so it's coming up on shift changes, 30 minutes before shift change, and you get the call. And you go 5 minutes away from the station, and it's for a kid who fell and broke his arm. Well, the patient wants to go 30 minutes away to a hospital that can set bones, cast them, those kind of things. The local hospital has no ability to put a cast on. They'll put a splint on, call your truck back, and send you up the road to take them to another hospital, generating more bills for the patient, generating a delayed time in care. Now, no, broken arm is never a life-threatening situation. But the professional, the non-burnout, says, all right, what would you like to do? Okay, you want to go to Athens? That sucks, but let's do that. And you don't say that sucks, okay? Some of it's internal. But you go, okay, reasonably speaking, the level of care says I can't go to the local hospital. And yeah, now it's 15 minutes till your shift change. That sucks, but it happens sometimes. The professional says, this sucks, but I'm going to do it. And you put them in the back of the truck, and you take them 30 minutes up the road. You do your paperwork. You clock out 2 hours late, however it works out. And then you go on about your day. Quite possibly, with good communication, you can communicate to the mother, hey, we absolutely want to take care of your kid. And you get on the phone, you do it privately, but you call the other truck that doesn't shift change for another hour and a half. See, they're staggered shift changes for a reason. And you say, hey, could you come take this kid we've got him stabilized, he's fine. Can you come down here? And while it might be a 15-minute wait for us to get there, you're there, you're filling out some paperwork, you're talking to him. I mean, yes, now you're talking about transfer of care, those kind of things. There are ways around it. But most of the time, the professional just says you suck it up and you do it. The burnout doesn't communicate anything, doesn't tell the mom you can take them in the car. And moms freak out, right? That's parents in general freak out when their kid gets hurt. That happens. And yeah, a broken arm can be splinted by home people or by us. And you can put them in a car and go to the hospital, because it is non-life threatening. And no, there is nothing we're really going to do in the back of the ambulance except keep you comfortable with the splint and drive you there. And you have no ride to get back. Those are all fine and good, but the burnout doesn't say anything. The burnout scoops up the kid, puts him in the passenger seat of the car, shuts the door, tells the partner to get in the truck. That's a real thing that I experienced. I didn't do it. That's a real thing I experienced. And it only caused some minor. I mean, I'm sure there was disciplinary measures. There was a write-up stuff, but the medic who was there, I got to see something, because I judged him. I was very wrong. I very much judged him, thought he was a horrible person. He should be fired and out of the business. But it wasn't until later in life, for a couple of things, I realized if we communicate more with each other, if we talk about our lives, if we connect with each other, if we just have I know this is almost a bad word in politics nowadays, and this is non-political at all. This is a real thing. But we have just a safe space to be able to vent and go, I think the policies of this company are stupid. I don't understand them. I think they're stupid. Can you educate them? And you don't. A safe space means you never have to sit down and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna again use Huey because he was my mentor and he was a great leader. And while he made his mistakes, I felt like he taught me a lot about leadership and about how to do things correctly. And there were times when I said, "Hey, I don't understand this." And he would explain it to me. There are other times, and I'm talking about not in his office as much as when he's on a truck with me for 24 hours. And it's a little bit different scenario, right? When he's the boss and you're in his office, there might be different ways to handle things. And when you're in front of people, that's the other thing too. When you're in front of people and you're insubordinate, that changes the conversation. Then when you're behind closed doors, say he's your partner for the day, and y'all are working the truck, you can say to your quotey fingers boss, I think that's stupid as blankety blank. And he'll go, all right, well, explain to me why you think it's stupid. And I did. And he goes, okay, well, here's what you don't understand. Oh, so I didn't have the need to say, that's the safe space. That's what I'm talking about. That's the safe space. I didn't have the requirement of being polite, of being societal. I was able to voice what I thought in the way I thought it, and then get the education that I needed. And that's the flip side. You've got to listen. You have to be ready for the education because that's the only way to change things. So I just remember. Oh, and okay. So looking back, so the medic who did the scooping up the kid, there was a very narrow gray area. I don't remember if they got a refusal, which of course they talked the mom into it because she wanted to go by ambulance. So there could be some cases to be made for negligence, for abandonment. It was a on the precipice of a very bad thing. And here's the thing: that was not his everyday activity. That was a you could almost call it a cry for help because little things have been building up and building up and building up, and the whole service at one point had been together like a family, and we were starting to feel fractured for different. And the reason was nobody was talking to each other. Something would happen, and everybody else would talk about it and about the people who were involved, but never have a discussion about with the people involved about what happened and the perception of it and these things. And I remember, I can't remember if it was after that call or some other time, but I do remember we call it in the South the come to Jesus meeting, right? Whereas you get together and you air your grievances and you have to get on the same page or you have to get out. And the same page being the page of the admin. This is our page. Now everybody gets to air their grievances and fight a little bit and say things and voice their opinions. But at the end of the day, you got to come to Jesus, right? You got to get on our page and however we can make that happen, we'll work with you. You know, and that changed everybody's attitude. That meeting, it allowed me to say how I always felt talked down to, and even though I'd been there for 3 years and felt like I was treated like crap, and it allowed me to say when fill in the blank medic, and I'm talking to their face. When you do this, I think that's really crappy medicine. Except obviously we were able to say whatever words we wanted, and there were a lot of four-letter words that flew around. There were some tears that were shed, because people cared, and it had gotten to a point where some people didn't care, and so we did get back on the same page, and that's what communication does, and that's how you avoid burnout. And that's one of the things I had to apologize for judging that particular medic at some point in my career because I saw where he really cared and he was really on fire about stuff, and then I saw where it dipped down to he didn't give a crap about anything, and he just really, on the surface at least, he just didn't care. But I think deep down he did care. But it's that burnout, it's that lack of communication, it's that thing on my finger that I fidget with. So I have a. I just saw the video playback and I had the clip on my finger because I do fidget with things when I'm thinking when I'm talking. And no, I do not have a fidget spinner. But here's the thing with burnout: new EMTs, new medics were fresh, we're big eye, we're ready for the world. We're here, we're eager to save the world and to be the hero. And my biggest mistake I think I ever made was assuming everything's always going to be like this. Whatever this is at the time, everything's going to be like this, right? And I got my first job, and the politics there, man, I felt like I was never trained well as far as how to do things. I felt like there were definitely double standards of what went on. There was never a here, we're here to help mentality with any of that crew. It was always mocking me. One guy kind of finally took me under his wing and helped a little bit, but for the most part, mocking me, making fun of me, getting me in trouble because I didn't. From an admin standpoint and from a seasoned medic, seasoned EMT, I've been working here for over a year. I've been in the field for more than 2 years. Point of view, wherever you are, when somebody new comes in, your attitude should be, let's set them up for success. Let's help them. Some places it's never like that. Some places it's screw the new person. Some places they're there to stab you in the back. And that was the first place I ever, well, no, that's the second place I ever worked. The first place was a fly-by-night private ambulance service that went out of business before I ever get a paycheck. And I did learn a few things there, but not much. Not much. I really always felt alone. I felt like I was on my own. My second job was all politics with a local hospital where I lived and the EMS service based out of that. And again, it was here's some orientation, here's a book, read it, go over some things. But it was you were expected to be a seasoned pro walking in the door, and everybody knew I'd just come out of school. I'd had maybe 6 weeks of field quotey fingers work at a private fly by night service that went under, that folded before I got this job, and it was not 911. So I have no experience under my belt, and I'm an EMT. I am 19 years old at the time. So baby, I'm just a baby, and just was thrown to the wolves. Just couldn't, was taking time, having to take time to adjust to a 24-hour schedule, uh, learning how to interact with, so many different personality types. I mean, we could talk about that one day of so many different personality types that are in EMS and how you can learn to work with most of them. You might not be able to work with all of them, but that's your own personality type, and we'll see what happens. But it was just such a hard road that I was PRN, so they took me off the schedule, so I never got fired, technically, legally speaking. But they took me off the schedule, so I know I didn't have a job anymore. Just one day came in, and here's the thing. Let me talk about that. This leads to burnout. This is bad communication. When I was hired, the bosses said, here's what we expect you to do. If you're not running a truck, if your truck's not out running for any reason, you have to go stand in the ER and help out. Okay, that sounds like clinicals and it sounds sucky, but I can do that. I always like helping people. I like interacting with things. Well, the ER was kind of at odds with the EMS. Certain nurses like certain medics and vice versa. But for the most part, it wasn't a, hey, we're a team. It was, hey, get out of the way, and just uncomfortable. And so I started doing that. When I was brand new hired there, I would show up for work. And granted, that doesn't matter. Anyway, I'd show up for work, do the checkoffs like you're supposed to, check with my partner for the day, see what they want to do. And if they were just sitting around doing whatever they were doing, I went over to the ER. I was the only one. None of the seasoned medics, none of the seasoned EMTs, nobody else went and did that. So I'm like, all right, I really don't have to do this. Well, one of the things they took me off the schedule for was because I wasn't going and helping the ER. Didn't matter that nobody else did, and I even pointed out nobody else did. It's all about me, blah, blah, blah. There was a time when my partner went and laid down in the bunk rooms and went to sleep. I was exhausted, so I did it too. I got in trouble for sleeping, and my partner didn't. Just because. And that is a horribly toxic environment to be in. I had a medic that was out to get me. She didn't write me up like in the authoritative official write up. There was a book we could write things and make comments in, and she would write something ugly about me every single shift I worked because she was a asshat and took it out on me. I don't know. It was just a mess, and there were other situations like National, where I worked, where you could sit down and talk to any of the leaders, whoever your personality clicked with. I personally clicked with Hugh and David Briscoe, And then my commanders, I mean, Christy Cole was a good one, Chuck Savage, uh, uh, different things like that, different people like that. Angie McCann, I think, was one of my first commanders, and I personality wise, I clicked with these people, but and they had no policy that said you have to go to this one person. Whoever you clicked with, you could go and talk to them, and either they would keep it at their level and say, okay, here, let me educate you, let me help you out, let me point you in the right direction. Sometimes it was a grievance that needed to go to somebody else. But at any time, I could talk to my commander, I could talk to my captain, I could talk to, I'm not sure what the title was, but I remember Huey was over Morgan County. He was like the county manager, I guess. I'm not sure what the title would be. I believe Robbie was over Conyers, or Benny, I forget which one of the two, was technically over the Conyers thing and of ops. And anyway, it doesn't matter about that. But I could go to, hey, Kurt, how's it going? I could definitely go to Huey about something. I could go to David Briscoe, who was over education, and talk to him. It didn't matter what it was. And that helped a lot. But when you ultimately get into a situation, now I'm talking about political burnout, right, where things don't make sense. When you get into a situation where you're quoting fingers, you're expected to do things and nobody else does it. Hey, Wesley Paul, how's it going? When you're expected to, in any job, I'm specifically talking about EMS, but when you're saying, well, this is what we expect out of our team. You come in, you wash your truck every day, you check the truck off, and uh, uh, I don't know, you go out and do territory studies. I don't know, throw in something there. We say, okay, that's the standard. Okay, that's the standard. But then when you're the only person doing it, and then you say, hey, this crew left me a dirty truck, and a response back to them is, check the truck before they leave. Make sure they do it. No, we're equals. I'm a medic, they're a medic. I'm an EMT, they're an EMT. We're equals. Why is it my job to make sure they do their job? That's your job, captain. That's your job, commander. That's your job, blah, 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 fill in the blank. And that'll burn you out. And I've been in situations where that was the answer. Hey, this crew consistently is leaving needles exposed. They're leaving blood on the seats. And I'm talking about in a slow area. I'm talking about in Jasper County. When we ran 14,000 people lived in the county, and we ran maybe 1,000 calls a year or something. I mean, it was slow as crap. There's no reason to give me a dirty truck for anything. And I complained about it. And my there only had one boss. And my one boss was like, just check it off before they go, make sure they do it. So that made us fight each other. That made me come in. Now, at one point at my station, we got 3 good medics, and we all worked together. Jeff, Lisa, and myself, the 3 of us all went, we're going to work together. We're going to make sure that we take care of our business, because I think I came in after Jeff, and Lisa came in after me. And then, of course, Jeff would come after her, and we would pass messages along. And we teamed up and said, why fight when we can just make sure to help each other out, right? And so we'd say, hey, thank you for giving me a cleaned up truck. Later on, I found this little bit. Just letting you know, heads up. I cleaned it up, no worries. Or, hey, you forgot your paperwork in the clipboard. I turned it in for you. Oh, thank you. And then that almost pays it forward. I'm going to read your comment, Wesley, here in a second. That almost pays it forward. To where then, oh man, thanks for taking care of me. So then when they come in behind somebody, something happens, they're like, oh, hey, we got you. Just letting you know, we took care of it. We're a team. And that helps you go, oh yeah, I need to make sure to get my paperwork out of the clipboard and turned in. And it also gives that good spirit versus, I'm not taking the truck. I've had medics tell me it's unacceptable. They're not accepting the truck. I'm like, what part of it? Just, no, you need to go clean it. Again, back-to-back communication. Now, you tell me specific, because I think I do a damn good job on taking care of my trucks. What is it that you find unacceptable? And they wouldn't tell me. They just want to start a fight. So I left. I literally just went into my truck, left. And my personal vehicle is what I'm saying. And they tried to write me up. And, of course, they went nowhere because the leaders, the Quotey Fingers leadership at the time didn't care. They didn't care. So Wesley says, amen, brother. Best way the chief has told me. Don't accept the station or apparatus because then it's on me. Now, that is true, but there's a way to do that. That's what I'm talking about, Wesley. That's what I'm talking about is there's a conflictual way that burns you out. Because I got to tell you, me personally, if I feel like if I right now I work for myself, so I'm used to doing things on my own. But when I work with a team, when I work for a company, I take that back. One of my things I do for myself is I get some clients. One of my clients, I have a section of their business, and there's other people who have other sections. And slowly but surely, what I worked on was a team to understand what this section wants and needs, what this section wants and needs, what I want and need, and how we can help each other out. And that's what it's like at an EMS station to me. Even if you're in a slow one where it's just two people, a medic and an EMT, and you just relieve that each time. To tell me I'm not accepting the station or the apparatus, well, okay, if it's obvious, if there's needles sticking out in the truck, if there's blood and trash, if there's stuff everywhere, well, you shouldn't have to tell me to clean it up. That's on me. If you come into the station and you're like, there's dirty dishes in the sink, well, okay, that should be obvious. That's on me. But when you come in, I'm trying to think of a situation. There was one situation where the medic behind me loved the sweet tea that I made, and he loved that I paid for it. Which isn't much when you go to the grocery store and buy a box of tea bags and a pound, 5-pound bag of sugar or whatever. But he loved that I pay for it, so he made me a deal that because we didn't leave much dishes, we never made much of a mess, and we'd clean up the tea. Okay, sure, and he came to me with that, so I didn't get sloppy, but by no means did I worry about any dishes in the sink the next morning until another medic came in with the same guy. And he was all about prim and proper and doing things. And he's like, no, you got to get, and I told him, no, the deal is, I don't care what the deal is. I mean, he got in my face. And I hated that dude for a very long time because he didn't listen. He was just trying to he was a part-time person coming in from another place. And he was trying to I ruled this place and I know what I'm doing. No, you might be a great medic and you might be actually really good, but what you're bad at is listening. So being able to work together, it helps you stave off burnout. But burnout, I think, comes for many reasons. The ultimate burnout comes from being actually burned out, right? You just can't take the lack of sleep anymore. You just can't take, in some places, the lack of pay anymore. And some situations, it's that one call. What is that one call? It's different from everybody, for everybody. For me, it was a kid who quit climbing. He was on a rock wall, supervised. The nurse was literally happened to be standing on the ground. He just stopped climbing. Basically, he died and just fell off the wall. And they held him. They lowered him down slowly. He was dead when he was laid down. Never got him back. Don't know why he died to this day. And that broke me because my whole thought, I rationalized everything away, right? I was always, trauma victims die from trauma. Old people die from old age, And I'm a big fat guy. No, this is judgment. These are facts. Fat people die from diabetes and high blood pressure and not taking care of themselves. And I'm a big, heavy guy. So I just want to be clear. There's no judgment. These are rationalizations that I had. But there was this window of what I could fix, what I could help with. I mean, you can still an old person who's got stage 4 cancer and, liver disease and everything else, more than likely you're not going to get them back. But what we're trained for, right? The trauma victims that we can save. And I actually did get a save on a really bad trauma victim one time. But the ones that we can save, the ones that we help by just getting them to higher care treatment, those kind of things. The being kind and generous in people's lives that actually changes lives and can help people heal because you're kind and generous and put them at ease, which I believe is one of our most important jobs as medics. But that kid, there was no rationale. Healthy, not allergic to anything, no bee stings found on his body, no drugs found in his system, nothing. He just stopped climbing. They ultimately ruled it SIDS at 12, and apparently SIDS can go up to like 18 or something. It's a catch-all like cardiac arrest. What'd they die from? Well, their heart stopped beating ultimately, so we put down cardiac arrest when it really was the 2 pounds of crack they had in their system or something, but the family doesn't want to be, they want to be in denial. So you don't put drug overdose, you put cardiac arrest. SIDS can be the same way, or at least this is some old experience knowledge. So keep that in mind. Things may be a little bit different today, but that's what it was then. And when I say then, I'm talking about 2000 and something, 2004, 5, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I was a medic at that point. and the kid, it just got chalked up to SIDS, and that broke me because I'd staved off all my stress instead of dealing with any kind of stress, instead of talking about my stress, because that will change your life. That will free you to be able to say to somebody, I could have done more, and have an educated, respected professional go, no, you couldn't. You did everything you could. And now let's talk about how it's affecting you. I just rationalized, well, that's what you did. You don't talk about your weaknesses. You don't go, cause everybody has stress on them. Everybody has something going on at home. Everybody is not getting paid enough. Everybody's getting sleepless nights. Everybody's dealing with something. So I never felt, not that the door was never open to me. I believe if I had approached any number of people that come to my mind right now, it said, I'm struggling with stress and I need some help. They either would have sat down and talked with me, they would have shared their own personal stories, which is exactly why I do everything from personal stories. So you go, oh, he's been there, he gets it. Because that to me helps. When I can share some of my darkest stories, some of the things that really got to me. And maybe you haven't even reached that level of darkness. Or maybe you've gone deeper, but at least it's there where you say, oh, I'm not alone. Because it's that feeling of being alone that when we're talking, going back to the trucks and accepting the station in the truck, you feel like you're alone if the other crew doesn't care and they trash you and leave you to clean up the mess. You feel alone. When you're responsible for the truck as a paramedic or a paramedic captain and you got a new EMT or even a seasoned EMT, the weight's on you, you feel alone. Only way to defeat that feeling is to talk about it. Is to talk with other people to know you're not alone, to know that you're out there. I burned out I burned out because of that. Because I just kept it to myself. I didn't talk to my wife much about it until now when the child thing happened, the 12-year-old rock climber thing happened. I did go to counseling. I talked about that in another discussion that we had here on Facebook before, so I won't go into the details there. But I did take the critical debriefing counselor's advice, which it wasn't a critical event. Well, okay, critical could be defined in many ways. Maybe it was, but he didn't help me. He just gave me some material, told me to talk to my wife about it, and that I'd be fine. I did need somebody to tell me I'd be fine, but I think I needed a little bit more than that, and I've had to sort it myself. But I did start talking to my wife about things then to get, because she was the only one willing to really sit down and listen and talk and help. It will affect your marriage. It will affect your friendships. It'll affect your family life if you start shutting out doors. But what will also happen, the flip side of that is if you start talking to people who are willing to listen about your stories. And I mean, I loved hearing some of the stuff that's funny, or the crazy calls, right? That's the stuff we share the most. What we don't share is what effect it had on us. And that's what I want to talk about today. I mean, that's what I am talking about today. I'm looking at my time. That is what I'm pushing here is as people listening, as anybody who tunes into this, when you tell your story, because we all do it, right? You get around medics and, oh, I remember this time when this happened. And you're telling the funny part. But if there's a story that maybe isn't the funny part, you have to be brave and strong. And you have to maybe have dealt with it some before you can share it. But you have to share, this is what happened to me. Because that burnout medic, the first one I talked about he scooped up the kid. He didn't talk to the parents. He was a very bad employee and medic and community dweller that day. I got to watch him finally share some stories about how things affected him. I got to watch him in a meeting that we had, that Come to Jesus meeting, where we were all saying, I can't, why is this going on? Here's how I see things happening. This is and he got to break down about how he grew up in that community. And it breaks his heart. And he apologized for some of his actions and the bad decisions he had made. But it was breaking his heart that it didn't seem like people cared anymore about the community. And we all have defenses as human beings. And I'm reading into this, but one of his defenses was to act like he didn't care when he did. Because he felt like he couldn't change anything. He felt like, and I mean, when I met him, he was like an 18-year veteran, right? He had been there forever in those terms. I mean, if he's still active now, you're talking almost 30 years of service. He was a first responder in the county he lived in when he was 18 years old. I think he was 40 maybe when I met him. So that'd be even over an 18-year veteran. And last I heard, and it's been a while since I've heard from him or about him, but last I heard he was still active. And I mean, and he's a man who believed in his community. He's a man who believed he had that belief to give back. And the ups and downs of life are sometimes people come in who don't care. And you fight the good fight, but fighting can wear you down. Talking makes the change. And getting everybody on the same page makes the change. But the reality is, in our business, nothing lasts forever. That's why we're here. And that, I mean, that goes to a business sense of you might get a good partner, but good partnerships go south because a good partnership can turn bad easily because you shut down outside communication. You cover for each other. You take care of each other. I did that. I had a partner for a little while, and then I had a different partner. It took about the better part of a year for me to find the right partner to work with because I had my own damage, right? I had my own baggage I was carrying. I had come from that toxic EMS environment to this one, and I was fighting back against authority a little bit because the authority had screwed me over, in my opinion, in the last job. So it was difficult for me to lock into a good partner. I finally got one. I got one. They put me with this guy and said, do what you can with him. And he did. And I learned a lot in a year from him. But after that year, and normally in national EMS, normally they will change up partnerships over after 6 months. Because, and I asked Huey, I mean, that's one of the things I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing this. And I'm just being ugly to Huey one day, just venting. And he goes, well, let me tell you exactly why we do that. Because you develop a relationship. If it's a guy girl thing, it can affect your marriage very badly. If it's just a guy or girl thing, it can affect the business very badly because all of a sudden you'll stop talking to other people and you're only in that clique. And what we try to do is one, get people to work together because you never know what you might learn from somebody else. So we want to swap up partnerships for that reason. Two is to avoid the negative outcomes of shutdown of communication, of possible problems outside of work that can be caused. And I went, oh, all right, that makes sense. Well, I learned that after I had worked with Chuck for a while, and Chuck went through some stuff in life, and he had to deal with some stuff in life, and it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming for him. It was a very bad, stressful time for him. And I thought I was doing what I could to help him by knowing he's making bad decisions. Never compromise patient care. That was the line. He never compromised patient care, not once. But everything else was free game. You know, there were bad decisions made. I felt abandoned at points, and I felt like I betrayed the company I worked for that I owed some loyalty to because not only did they give me a job and a paycheck, they took care of me when I messed up. They trained me when I messed up. They invested in me personally to show me better ways, to make sure I became the medic that they thought I could be. And I shut down communication. I didn't report to somebody, hey, I think this is going to be a problem. He needs some help. I didn't even really offer to help him. I mean, you got to also imagine at the time, I'm sorry, my nose itches. I was probably 20 years old. I was fairly newly married myself. And my partner was 10 to, I don't remember how old he was. He was older than me. He wasn't quite old enough to be my father, but he was old enough to be a father figure. And he held down 2 EMS jobs, which will age you. He had been in EMS for a very long time and seen a lot of stuff and was a good teacher and had his own way of doing things. But he was having problems in his marriage. And that was affecting his work. And his other job was very busy. His other job was stressful. A lot of BS politics. And I've agreed to keep my language, just so anybody worries about it, you know, goes, well, I've agreed to curtail my language for the school. But if you ever get me out where I'm talking, I talk like a paramedic. But he dealt with a lot of stress at his other job, and then he was dealing with stress at home, and then he brought it to my station. And made some bad decisions. And at no point I say, "Hey, man, let me talk to you," because I felt like I had nothing to offer. I was 20 years old, barely married myself, didn't know what to tell him, and was still deeply rooted in a church way of thinking that was false. And before all the church people get all crazy on me, I want to explain. I didn't know what I believed. I was spouting things I heard. And when you tell somebody who's truly going through stress, who's dealing with real issues in life, and you tell them something you don't understand or truly know why you believe it, you just repeat something you heard, it is empty and it is nothing. The only way to help somebody is to speak from what you truly understand. And so I was unhelpful to him. I had nothing to offer. And so instead of getting him help, I covered it up. That adds to your stress and that adds to burnout. Because had he compromised patient care, had he chosen to steal drugs and get high, had he chosen to do many other things that would have cost his license, I would have gone down with him. There could have been one bad decision away from criminal charges. Fortunately, he was a man of integrity. And while, like I said, while some bad decisions were made, there were lines that he refused to cross. And I'm grateful for that because I didn't know how to help him. What I'm saying is, in all this, there's always somebody there to help you. I'm here. I'm here to share my stories and discuss what you want to discuss and to listen, to tell you there is a better way. Like you come back to communication, but that's the thing is in everything you deal with in stress in life, breakdown in communication makes it worse. And I'm dealing with some of that right now in my own life. Is that communication is broken down and it's breaking things. And I've got to figure out how to fix it back, how to communicate better. Because one last thing before I get out of here, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about bad communication. Going back to my partner who was going through the bad times, and the reason I decided to bottle it up was because I didn't want to add to his problems. Because that's the thing I feel, and I feel that now in what I'm dealing with, is I see you as a person are handling or doing the best you can under an enormous amount of weight, and you're dealing with a lot of stress, rightfully so. Stuff that life just hits you sometimes and it makes it bad. And I go, how can I help? How can I help? Or I think maybe helping is to stay to back off and let you have your space, which maybe is the worst thing to happen. But then there comes a point where my partner did this. I told you I felt abandoned. He started. We had a third rider come by a lot. He started hanging out with them outside, away from me all the time. I felt excluded in my own station. I was never told to leave them alone, and once in a while I tried to tag along with them to see what they're doing, and I felt like a third wheel. You know, it's one of those things where you feel like there's something they'd rather be doing that doesn't involve you. And I'm not inferring to sex. I'm just saying in general. Maybe they wanted to work with metal. I mean, I can't remember. There's a lot of stuff you could do around that station. Most of it I didn't care about. I just liked video games and chilling out in the air conditioning. But, there were times my partner washed the truck. Of course, I feel guilty. And I come out there and he goes, nope, I'm just burning energy. I don't need you. Okay, I can get that. But that became more and more and more. And at one point, I started having a problem with him. And I felt like if I tell him about my problem with him, it adds to his problems, right? It adds on, it piles on. So life is piling, life is piling, life is piling. Everything seems to be going wrong. And you're making bad decisions because your head is pushed down under the weight, is pushed down under the weight of the stress. And you're unable to look up and make better decisions. So I held back, which caused more problems. And we have a decent relationship now. I mean, some stuff went down, and he was asked to leave for a little while from the company, and he ended up, I believe, coming back and definitely had a. And that's the thing about being a company. You have to understand people are human. In every job that you have, people are human. And while some decisions will say no, no thanks, we don't want you back ever again. Some decisions are like, we need you to go take care of your life. But if you come back and talk to us, we'll be willing to listen. That's the most you can ask for. And I apologized to the people, to my superiors, saying, this has been going on for about 6 months. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. And they did the best thing possible and said, it is not your fault. This is exactly why we do swap up partners after a certain amount of time. But this is not your fault. This is still, all the decisions were his. And that's where I first learned about personal responsibility. That no matter what help you don't get, no matter how abandoned you are, no matter how much you're shut out, no matter how much you feel alone, you're still responsible for your decisions. So later on in life, in the career of paramedic, when I felt shut out by a company or I felt alone, this goes to Jasper County. There's a paradigm in medicine, and I haven't done the math in a very, very long time, but in a standard 24-hour, 48-hour off, 24-48, right? In a standard shift like that, for 2 weeks, you'll get, if I remember right, 100 and something hours, like 120 hours. Yeah, 60. I think it's roughly 60 hours a week. So 120 hours, more or less, and 2 paychecks. And then 1 paycheck, you'll get 96 hours. Well, that hurts with the billing and the paying your bills and those kind of things. But that's standard. But that's on a 5 shift to 6 shifts, depending on how it falls on the calendar. Schedule, right? And then the short check is 4 shifts the way it falls. I believe that's correct. 24, 48, 8, 96. Yeah, 96, 4 shifts. Well, there's this paradigm that when you start doing more overtime, right, you can take on so many shifts depending on your pay bracket before the amount of pay in one check kicks you up a tax bracket and you actually lose money until tax time. When I was in Jasper County, we were struggling to fill trucks. And I had already been working 2.5 days straight. So I'd worked 2 days, went home for 8 hours or so to decompress, to see my wife for a minute, and then went back to work. And at night, I'm back at work. Somebody calls out, and this person's talking to me and going, when they called out, we have nobody. Can you stay? And I went, no, I'm in the same pay period. I've already worked. In that pay period, I think I already worked 2 or 3 extra shifts. So I knew I was on the verge of getting bumped. And like, no, that's not true. You'll be fine. I do these many hours all the time. And really, they just didn't want to do it. They were burned out too. They were dealing with their own stress. And the lesson I learned later was, your problem is not mine. I have to take care of myself. My problem's mine. Your problem's yours. I have to handle my own business. Personal responsibility. But there, I knew I'd already done the math. And I knew if I'd worked an extra shift more, and I'm talking about full 24 hours more, I was going to lose money. No, I promise you, I do this all the time. I promise you. And then, of course, they play on the guilt that I have. And I do have somewhat of a superhero complex sometimes. I just want to make sure the community I live in is taken care of. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only person who can do that. Well, guess what? The universe hates a vacuum. If you believe you're the only person who can do it, you'll be the only person to ever do it. And you'll look around going, nobody else takes overtime. No, they don't. Because they don't want to. Because you're doing it. But the moment you step out, sure, maybe they would have shut down a truck. Maybe that wouldn't have been the end of the world. Maybe it would have been what the community needed to say, oh, wait, what? A truck got shut down, and now we only have 1 ambulance with 2 medics to cover the whole entire county, and something went badly wrong. So instead, I said, okay, fine. And I did the shift, and sure enough, I lost money because the bracket it kicked me up to took a huge chunk out, so the overtime I was counting on was gone. Until, of course, tax time, when I file my taxes, get it back. That, depending on the time of year, that could be a whole nother year away. In this particular case, it was about 6 months away. I needed that money now to pay my bills. That's when I quit that job. That's when it sunk into me, your problems are your problems. I am not the answer to every problem in the world. And that's something as a medic and as an EMT, when you believe in what you do, that's the hardest thing to understand. And by no means do it does apply to medicine. If somebody has chosen to drink all their lives and now their liver is failing, as a paramedic, we have very, very, very little we can do about that except get them to higher care. By no means do I say you stop caring about patients. And Again, I'm going to reiterate. Well, I believe your number one job is as a paramedic is to be compassionate, and in that brief moment you're with somebody, give them care, give them hope, give them compassion, and for a brief moment make them feel like a human being again. And you never know, that could cure them. And by no means I mean, by the power of Grayskull, are you cured? I mean, reminding them of what it's like to be a human instead of a healthcare problem. That can change their outcome. I told the story before. I'm not going to tell it right now. I'll tell it again some other time about how I changed somebody's life simply by just talking to them and treating them like a human and not a problem or a patient. Now, granted, there are going to be times when you need to compartmentalize and deal with a problem. Absolutely. Trying to wrap this up. Going back to that thing with Jasper County, there was lots of issues going on there. But that's when I went, okay, 3 things I learned, if I remember this right. One is your problem is not my problem. I want to take care of myself. So you have to shut the truck down. I'm sorry, there's no way I'm going to fill this position tomorrow. I have to go home to my wife. I have to put some priorities first. And if I say my family's first, but I'm always here, I'm lying. So that was 1. Your problem is yours to deal with. I'm sorry. 2, personal responsibility. By allowing them to talk me into their choice instead of my own. And by failing to hold on to, I did the math. I knew I was going to get kicked out of the tax bracket. And I blamed them. So the aftermath was I blamed them, broke the relationship, had a massive fight with them, and left on bad terms. But the personal responsibility was, no, I chose to say yes. So instead of believing in myself, going, no, I did the math, I'm sorry, I'm going to take responsibility for my decision and either say yes and know that I get kicked up and say, okay, I chose to get kicked up because I chose to help instead of go home. That's fine. Where I chose to go home and the truck shuts down and I get the money I was needing to pay my house payment so I wouldn't have to file bankruptcy. Then, that personal responsibility would have made the choice, the path easier to walk. The third thing that I realized is life goes on. The universe hates a vacuum. I am not the stopgap for every problem ever in the world. And to walk away and say, you just have to find somebody else to fill it, or you have to shut the truck down. Somebody either would have shown up, or something would have changed, or the truck would have shut down and everything still would have been fine. Those 3 things had I learned early on in my career instead of at the end of my career. Because that was the last EMS job I had. I left there hating them. I left there fed up with all the stupid politics and the failure to lead and the fighting amongst each other. And honestly, the hiring of people that did not care when I cared because I lived there. And it didn't matter how much I yelled at them and fought them, which I'm a really good fighter. As good as I am at entertaining and laughing and making you laugh and educating, I'm just as good at fighting and making you feel like crap. But unless you don't care. If you really are like, I'm here for the money, there's no way they're going to fire me, I'm powerless against that. So I left angry at all these things. Well, guess what? That county is still running. That county is still surviving. The trucks are still out there. Healthcare is being delivered. And quite possibly, I'm not in that county anymore. I have no idea who works there. Quite possibly, there's some great medics down there now. So if I'd learned, your problem is yours, my problems are mine first when I was young and new to the business. If I'd learned personal responsibility, that the choice I make is mine and I own it. It could be the wrong one, but I own it. And I can go down the path, and that brings you freedom from stress. And then if I learned that I am not the answer to everything and life goes on, if I'd learned those 3 things early on in my career, it'd have been a whole different world. So please take those and learn those and understand. And most of what we do here, there's twofold to what we do with EMS Underground. One is we are a school, right? Georgia Institute of EMS. And so we have a lot of students, a lot of new people to it coming and asking questions. And look, so that's where I start from is educating the people who don't know. But the second fold, the second part of that is we attract some long-term people who are still in the business, who still are out there trying to do good things, or they just want to be entertained, or they want to share their stories. And you, by all means, that's what the chat room is for, to share your stories. That's why we use Facebook. It stays up there. Anytime anybody finds this post, they will see your stories, your comments, your input here. Argue, talk with me. But if we can change on both ends, the new people coming in to understand these three principles, to understand how to handle calls, to understand how to work with other people. And if we can get some people who are burned out maybe, or who have been looking for the right words to share, or who have been looking for the right resource to help others with, to say, I still want to make a difference, nobody wants to help, try some of these ideas. 42. The answer to everything is 42, not McFall. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. That's going to be it for today. I hope you got something out of it. Email us, EMSU at GAIEMS.org. That's EMSU. You can see it right here on the bottom of the screen. EMSU at Georgia I is Institute, right? GeorgiaIEMS.org. Call for any of the classes, 678-561-2368. The 5-week course is still going strong. It's got a few weeks left to go, and it's going great. I'm excited to see what happens with the students there and how they turn out. And we've got all kind of stuff going on, so check us out at Georgia EMS. Let me get you to right. You know what? Just right here. Everything's linked here on Facebook. Subscribe. Georgia Institute of EMS here on Facebook. We do this discussion every Thursday at 2:30 Eastern. And Laura asks, have you ever considered EMT support groups? I've heard some about the challenges, horror scars that might be. Yeah, I'm actually in two groups right now. I'm in a humor group that is fun and it's necessary, and it allows for you put up something that people laugh at, but then you can talk about it. And I'm in a PSTD group, post trauma stress. Yeah, PTSD. I said it wrong. I know I said it wrong. PTSD group for EMS. That I don't see a whole lot of things post up, so I forget to go check it. If we were to do one ourselves, there's a very fine way of doing that. So, yeah, no, I got what you're saying, Laura. There's that is something that's on my heart and my mind. To do an EMT support group, to give you a place, maybe be like AA, where you get to come in I'm going to make up a night every Wednesday night, and we have coffee, and you sit around and we talk about what's on us and how it's going. And that is a thought to have it in person as well, because everybody needs a place to talk. They need a place to talk that's safe. And you very carefully, I would absolutely model that after AA, 100%, because there are rules. Yeah, it's you come in. It's easy for these things to go sideways, and it's easy for these things to just become a bitch fest where it's this is wrong, that's wrong. So I that is something to EMTA. Well, see, we have advanced EMT. That can be confusing, EMTA. It is something to think about, and it is something that I definitely try to bring to the table here. But as you saw last week, everybody, you put something in the chat room, we'll discuss it. We'll talk about it. It become that back and forth that helps. Today is heavy. Today is just burnout and lack of communication was something that's really on me right this second. But some days it's more about the fun. It's more about the new techniques that are out there. It's about what you want to talk about. So tune in every week. We're here discussing it on Facebook Live. So it's a hybrid show. Like, this is a hybrid school. I'm not putting on a one-way show. It's not all professional with music and this and that and the other. But at the same time, you don't have the instant ability to just talk back to me as in a discussion in a live person. So it's a hybrid discussion. Send talk to me. Send the emails, EMSU at GeorgiaIEMS.org, and we'll keep you anonymous if that's what you want. But questions are questions, and when I say we, Tom Champlain jumps in as much as he can, but things are really taking off right now and growing. And I might be here by myself for a while, and if I'm by myself, I'll get caught up in my stories. So I need you to come out and share your stories, or give me your questions or thoughts, and let's make this a discussion, because by talking, we can change the world. There you go. Find out more of me at charlesmcfall.com. I've got all kind of shows that I do over there, all kind of projects that I work with. And like Laura, you can stalk me in the world. I met Laura this weekend out at the Jordan Renaissance Festival. And I'll be at Dragon Con in September for sure. So I'll be there on the podcasting track. If you're in the area and you geek out about things, or you want to hear more about what I do, or just talk to me, that's where I'll be. I'll catch everybody again next week.